Hi, and welcome to Hair with Clare. I'm your host, Claire Devereaux. I'm a trichologist, a stylist, and founder of Hair Health Essentials. Join me every week with my guests where we talk about big hair, short hair, loud hair, quiet hair, shedding hair, wedding hair, everything in between the nasty and the good, and where you can find out how to have a good hair day every day. We're going to unlock the secrets to healthy locks. Hi everyone, and welcome to Hair with Clare. I am your host, Claire Devereaux. I'm a trichologist, a stylist, and this week I am joined by published author. She's a journalist, she's a stylist, she's a Parkinsons advocate, and she's also my very, very dear and close friend, Annmarie O'Connor. Thank you so much for joining me today on my first episode of Hair with Clare.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, you're looking absolutely gorgeous. I'm usually the one half dressed, Annmarie, and here you are showing a bit of shoulder. The hair is looking fabulous, so you're definitely having a good hair day, and you're looking gorgeous. And for everyone out there, I obviously know you a long time. We're not going to say exactly how long, but to just do the background, I did meet Annmarie. Myself and Annmarie auditioned for the same TV show many, many years ago to be a presenter. And neither of us got the gig, but we became very firm friends. So
we did.
Yeah, because the show didn't last long anyway. So we gained friendship, which was much more important. And but just to tell everyone out there a little bit about your background.
So I am a fashion journalist. I've worked for various magazines like Elle Magazine, Irish Chatler, the Sunday Times Style, but for the past 15 years, I've been the fashion editor of the Irish Examiner. So they're really what I call home. I live in Cork, so I'm an honorary Corkonian. I'm a stylist, I'm a twice published author, and I'm a baby podcaster. I started a Parkinson's podcast in April of this year. And yeah, like you said, I do some advocacy work as well for Parkinson's disease.
Yeah, and we're going to get into that in a little bit because obviously that's a huge thing and you're being recently diagnosed in around the last year. So we will get into that. But for the first time, I just want to ask you, obviously working in fashion, your hair is very important when it comes to fashion, hair, clothes, makeup. And through the years, I've known you, you've had a lot of different hairstyles. Yes, I think when I met you, your hair was long for sure. And then you went very. So do you feel that those hairstyles have kind of been a mirror to what was going on in your life?
I do. When I was young, like obviously I lived at home. My hair was always long and brown and very kind of safe, bar one incident that I had when I was 15. I had a very bad haircut and I wound up getting my haircut really short then. Just to fix it because the haircut was awful. But that's what kind of gave me the kind of love of having short hair. So when you met me, my hair was quite long, it was curly. Prior to that, I was fond of the diffuser and mousse.
You were. We all were. I was the same because my hair is naturally curly and I smooth it out and then I curl it to give it a different kind of curl, which you probably do too. And at the time I embraced my curl, it was huge. You know, the bigger the better.
It was like its own ecosystem. And I used to throw my hair upside down and do that under the hair dryer in college, the hand dryer in the bathrooms. And my hair was just like expandable foam. It just got bigger and bigger. But when I met you, it was about shoulder length. And it was really when I moved to London, because I lived there for about 5 years, my hairdresser said to me one day, because it was kind of, it wasn't here, neither here nor there. It was kind of an in-betweeny kind of length. And she just said, look, will we just take it short? And I went, okay. I had nothing kind of precipitated that in terms of there wasn't a big change in my life, but it changed everything. So it became like my hallmark after that. I was a big fan of The Matrix. I loved Carrie-Anne Moss. I loved Trinity. Of course, I love Keanu Reeves. But I loved the whole idea of that leather, that strong kind of female empowerment. And I loved the hair. And at the time, Erin O'Connor was a big supermodel. And so I kind of emulated her. I loved that look. It was quite different because not everyone had short hair. So I liked to stand out. My mother always told me, because I'm 6 foot tall and I used to be quite apologetic about my height. And my mother always kind of made it clear to me, you should embrace your height. Nothing looks worse than a tall girl being apologetic about it. So I tended to kind of lean into that and go, oh, well, you know, I'd wear my high heels and I'd have my like short hair. And I had that for a while, but then I took it long again. And if you recall, I even went blonde for a period of time.
I do remember that. I do remember that. And I think that that's, and the thing is, I just want to say Annmarie she's a fabulous height. And no matter, I love high shoes. Annmarie will tell you I wear high shoes, but no matter how high they are, I'm still like, oh, Annmarie, I'm still here. Hello, you know, because she's beautiful, like model tall. And I think important about your hair being short, it's very brave sometimes. I've never been brave enough to go really short with my hair. And I think it is very empowering. You know, I've had clients and patients that do it, and friends obviously like yourself that do it. And I think it does make you feel very strong as a woman, doesn't it?
It does, but one thing I would say is that it was short-lived to a certain degree because my hair has always been, I've been growing gray since I was around 19. And I find that it starts in a little cluster in the back at the nape of my neck. And it was always a dead giveaway when I get my hair done at the hairdresser. Within, you know, 10 days, that would start to show, and I'd have to start using the spray to kind of cover it up. There was always a lot of like, it's it's much in the same way I think as like gray hair, or it's a look, it's an aesthetic, and you have to I developed a wardrobe nearly around it. Not saying that you have to, but like Claire, you remember it was like leather, lots of like, you know, biker boots. I mean, it was just I really leaned into it.
You did.
Not saying that you have to do that, but I came across a picture recently and it had the Elvis quiff and my black leather jacket on and the red lipstick and really pale skin. So I got to a point, I didn't feel feminine anymore. I didn't feel like myself. I find with age that my skin tone has changed, and even the lipsticks that I wore, I can't really wear the same tone anymore. So I was on a shoot and the hairdresser had done the model's hair and she had these beautiful caramel curls, and it was a lingerie shoot, and I was going, I want to look like that. I didn't feel sexy anymore. You know, I didn't feel I didn't, I was emerging, I think, into a different kind of self, if you will, because we all have stages in life. And I think, you know, it's important to experiment. And if you feel the urge, and it took a while, like, you know, it took a few years to grow it out, to go through the growing pains of taking it from super short to long, and then taking my hair from, which was black at the time, to kind of that in between, like those caramel tones, and adding the highlight. And ironically, I was like, you know what, the short hair is hard work. It was like I went into the hard work of doing highlights and lowlights and all of that.
Yeah, well, I think you've touched on so many points there, because I do think hair, especially longer hair, does make you feel more feminine. I know, you know, if you have short hair at the moment, you just chopped your hair, it's very empowering. But like that, after a while, you can kind of feel there's a hardness to it sometimes as well, particularly when you start
Yeah.
dressing in a certain way. So it's a certain look sometimes, and when you lean into it heavily, it is a certain look. But I definitely think embracing hair is a huge thing. I think when we see a lot of models, their hair is longer. Um, at the moment, there's a huge return to that 90s kind of trend. So we're going back to that bigger hair, Annmarie. We're delighted with that. And that supermodel big hair is
Yeah.
very in. That very luxurious look is very in. I think we're going back to that kind of like
Yeah.
definitely coming in at the moment. I'm sure you're seeing it in fashion as well. But something else I wanted to touch on there was two things really. First of all, about you going grey, that you've had grayer hair since a younger age.
Mm.
And a lot of that, a lot of people don't understand, it's the melanin in your hair, the pigment, that's the pigment in your hair. It's not actually growing anymore. It's not there anymore. It's like in your skin, you lose that kind of melanin as well. But in your hair, it means that your color starts to fade, and eventually it's just producing gray hair. And it's actually white, but can look gray depending on the color that you're in, really, that the tone that you're in. And for you, it was at the back, which is very unusual because most people, they see it around their hairline, they notice it first. And you've obviously colored your hair, which is fantastic, and I'm a huge advocate for that. But at the moment, we're seeing a huge surge of women going grey. We're seeing a lot of older models for M&S, different publications with grey hair. What do you think of this trend? What do you think of it?
Personally, I love it, but I don't love it on me.
Right.
And I'll tell you
Great
why.
point. That is so well said, Annmarie. That is so well said.
You know what? I think I see women, and there's, for example, I have two friends who, one who's gone gray and one who's going gray with an intentionally. So the one who has gone gray had very blonde, like strawberry blonde hair, and slid into that very effortlessly. And there was no kind of, there were no growing pains, if you will. And she loves it and it suits her. It's really easy for her as a mom. And my other friend, who's a mom, wanted to go into that kind of very elegant kind of gray. She's going from dark brown like mine. And she is in a world of pain with toners and she's stuck at a salt and pepper land, like Nowheresville. And she's like, when I just wanted to, I want to get to that end point. So I'd say with gray, there's a misconception that it's easy. I don't, and also the maintenance of gray as well. I'm not that familiar with it. You correct me if I'm wrong, but doesn't it need like special shampoo to help keep like a certain luster to it? So I find that with gray, when people say embrace your day, gray, go gray, we shouldn't have to. It's like, but what if we want to? I remember my grandmother said to my sister, we had this conversation recently, and Nana said, if we had hair dye back in my day, I wouldn't have gone white. I would have been using that. And my mother's 81 and she goes to the hairdresser religiously and gets it's a bit lighter than it used to be, but she chooses not to go gray. And for me personally, I think the linchpin was really COVID because I had a 3-inch root. And I mean, it was just both that and the blonde hair taught me when I went blonde, and I didn't really recognize. I would pass the mirror and think, I don't look like myself. I looked very drained. I
Yeah.
didn't have that life in my face. And much in the same way hair operates, I imagine, just like fashion does. I always say to people, and they're like, what are my colors? I'm like, put it up to your face. Does it give you life or does it wash you out?
Absolutely. And that is the thing with gray hair. Gray hair tends to wash out your skin tone. And what's great about color and like hair color is so amazing. I mean, I'm a trichologist, but I'm also a colorist and I love color. And it really can give a woman's hair just that bit of life that it needs, just
Yeah.
embracing, just putting that tone back into your hair if you've gone very gray. I'm very lucky I don't have any really gray, so I've never really had that. I'm actually very, very dark. And so for me, it's more a case of trying to get brighter all the time is more damaging on my hair. If I embraced my natural color like a brunette, it would be fine, but I don't want to do that. But I do get a lot of people saying this to me, and I think what you said is so right. I think it's not for you, and that's great. And I think in the same way, there's been a lot about kind of nearly shaming women if they're trying to look good and they're coloring their hair. And I think that that's not where we're at. I think, at the end of the day, we've come so far with everything that we can do to make ourselves feel better about ourselves. And I think if you want to color your hair, I think that is so like that is what you should do, because it does obviously make you look so much younger, and it also really makes your skin shine and pop and glow. And it's very hard to get that with gray. And also, as you said with your friend, most people are not this gorgeous, clean gray that they think exists.
Yeah.
Salt and pepper, they're darker gray through the back, they're a steel gray. They're maybe never the color that they envision it to be. And so
Mhm.
sometimes you definitely need help with that. And it can be a lot of work. So that is so true. You have that bang on the money. But I think it's something important to talk about, because there's a lot of things with aging that want, to embrace aging, which is fantastic and everything. But I also think most of us want to run the other way sometimes, and we want to look as good as we can for our age, which I think is so important. And I think you'd agree with that. There's so many things out there to help us now, so many great things for your face,
Yeah.
hair. So why not embrace it?
I think either way, Claire, I think it's a choice, whether you go grey or whether you choose not to go grey. And I agree with you, there shouldn't be shaming on either side of the spectrum. I've seen it myself because I wrote an article, this is going back years ago, where I was presenting both sides of the argument and I was talking about what was happening in Hollywood. And I said, for me, I haven't quite gotten there. I don't think I will. And I was just explaining, much like the conversation we've just had now, and the comment section was popping on Facebook. It's like people were taking umbrage to my choice, and as if I was casting aspersions on somebody else's choice, which I wasn't. you know, so it's a definitely a bit of a hot topic, I think.
It is, but we're all about choice. Whatever makes you
It's
feel
our choice.
good, I think that is the thing. And this podcast, I want to talk about your hair being healthy and how I really think having healthy hair is probably the most important part of it. Because if your hair is
Yeah.
healthy, not only are you normally healthy if your hair is healthy, but also your hair looks shiny and it looks good. And that's very, very important. And I want to go back with you probably around the time of COVID. So when we were socially distancing, we met for
Yeah.
walks. And I remember one day going for a walk with you, and we were sitting down by the canal or by the river. You remember this, I'm sure. And
Yeah.
you were telling me about your hair, and you were saying, "My God, my hair, it's coming out in clumps. I
Yeah.
part is getting bigger. I can see my scalp." And you were very, very distressed, very worried about it. And I said to you, Anne-Marie, you need to go get your bloods checked. It could be stress because we're all stressed with COVID, but
Mm.
also it could be something underlying. So would you like to take us on that journey of your journey with Parkinson's and being diagnosed, and maybe just a bit before that, changes that
Yeah.
in your body?
Yeah, it was interesting because Parkinson's happened during COVID.
Mhm.
And although my first symptoms were in September 2020, that's not a hard and fast rule. I probably had it for, much longer than that. As my neurologist explained, you can have preclinical symptoms for years. But to your point, I was very distressed around midsummer when there was a tiny bit of a relaxation. We could see each other socially distanced, and we were going for walks. My hair was coming out in clumps at the root in the shower. I had very, very visible part, and it's very distressing when that happens because my hair. Anyone who's blown my hair dry will attest to the fact that I have a sore arm afterwards because I always had such a mop of hair.
Yes,
And
loads,
it was
loads of hair.
loads of hair, and it had gotten so thin, and that's very distressing, I think, for anyone, for a man or a woman feeling their hair come out like that. You feel like, especially during COVID, when there's very little control, and you feel then that you have less control over what's happening to you physically. And although stress and cortisol levels can contribute to that, it's very difficult to try and get to that state of homeostasis again, and relax so that your hair isn't falling out. But very shortly thereafter, around September 2020, I was on a photo shoot, and I came back, and it was a few days later I'd woken up and I had a very sore arm. It was just very unusual. And I thought, oh, maybe it's because I was carrying heavy bags. And then there was lockdown. So I lived alone. I then noticed that it went from the pain in my shoulder to a very noticeable shake in my arm and my hand. I had such difficulty with the shoulder, I couldn't actually get my bra off sometimes to take a shower. I was like, well, I just shower with it on. What do I do, God? And I was speaking to my sister, and she said, will you promise me that when COVID restrictions relax, you please go to your GP? I said, I will, because the tremor was going from fine to coarse. So it was progressing. And Parkinson's, just as a to let you know what it is, if anyone's not very familiar with it, it is a progressive neurodegenerative. It's a brain disorder where you lose dopamine in the brain. So by the time you're diagnosed, you've lost about 60 to 80% of the nerve cells that produce dopamine. But how this manifests in a person is that it affects movement, balance, and coordination, but it also affects mood, mental health, and motivation. So it has quite an extensive remit. More than we think of dopamine, we think of the love drug, and how you feel when, when you go out on a date, or when you buy a new pair of shoes or
Yes, yeah,
something
that
like
rush,
that.
that happy rush.
Yeah, that happy rush. But anyhow, I'd gone to see my GP in March because, if you remember, we were told not to go to our GPs unless we had COVID. And then the radio ads had come out, basically telling people, please go see your GPs again, because in addition to, just say, the likes of Parkinson's with me that I didn't know I had, there were a lot of issues of people who had, needed to see their oncologist, who had cancer, so there was a big push. So I'd gone to see my GP, She's amazing. We went through 3 MRIs, one on my shoulder, one on my neck and spine, and one on my brain, and they all came out negative. And during this period of time, which is about a 6-month period, I had all down the right side of my body had lost power in my arm. I wasn't able to swing it. In my leg, I was dragging it behind me. And it got to a point when she called me in December. It was like December 15th, and she said, your brain MRI came back negative. This isn't right. And I said, in the meantime, I said, guess what's happened the past 2 weeks? I said, I'm shaking like a leaf. I can't put on my mascara in the morning, which should be deemed a hate crime. I couldn't even I couldn't open a bag of coffee. I had difficulty brushing my teeth. My hand was cupping like this. And even now, like my hand is still quite limp. I've lost a lot of power in my hand. And she just said, we're getting you into CUH, which is Cork University Hospital Acute Medical Unit. She said, we'll get you there at 9 a.m. Bring a book, a Sambo. You're going to be there for the day, and which I was. So I was there at 9. I saw a nurse, a doctor, 2 neurologists, and then who would be my consultant neurologist. So 4 people. And by 4 p.m., I was diagnosed with Parkinson's disease. And then I had a brain scan afterwards that goes a bit deeper and was able to confirm the loss of dopamine in the brain and confirm it as Parkinson's disease. So I had the clinical diagnosis, and then I had the kind of official stamp. So yeah, it was a big change for me. But just to fast forward, I started taking medication. My medication journey has been a bit tumultuous because the medication for women, this is part of my own Parkinson's advocacy journey, is helping people. As you can tell, I'm early onset. So most Parkinson's needs a makeover. It's not it's not the geriatric community solely. It's not men solely. It used to be that men were 1.5 times more likely than women to develop Parkinson's, but it's a bit more like 45-45 split, so the margin is getting even more narrow still. Although early onset is only 10% of the global population, which is 10 million people, there isn't enough information about how it affects females. And I can attest to this just in terms of I'm a massive lightweight when it comes to medication. But not least because a lot of medication is geared towards men, like in my humble opinion. If we know this historically, that a lot of clinical trials have always been done on men because it was a lot more difficult to include women, because if you look at a clinical trial that could last 5 years, women have babies. Yes. And that messes things up for someone who's trying to get consistency and evidence-based research. So yeah, a lot is changing, Claire. A lot is changing. But what I really want to do is to be that face to show people you're not alone. It's okay. And also, Parkinson's diagnosis isn't the end of the world. You don't die from it. You live with it. And it's learning how to live well with Parkinson's. It challenges you every day. Every day is a new set of, guess what I have for you? Buckle up, buttercup. But it teaches you resilience. It teaches you how to adapt and to go with the flow. But the more that we put our faces out there, the more we share that Parkinson's it's not a life sentence. And I know it can affect people in very different ways. I am an incredibly stubborn woman, and that is to my benefit. You know what I mean? And I just really think that the more visibility that we give, in particular to women, the more research will be done, and the more we'll get to a place where there's parity among the genders, and definitely for people who are early onset or even juvenile, where again it's rarer still.
Right, okay. Well, I think, first of all, you've handled it with such grace, Annmarie, and I know you a long time. And I do always remember you saying to me that you had a tremor in your hand and that you thought it was a trapped nerve at first. So
yes.
Yeah, I remember that. I remember that very distinctively. And then obviously your hair was showing signs that everything was just out of whack in your body.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously, and as I said to you, once you get that underlying condition sorted, your hair will follow suit. It might take a year, it might take a little bit longer, but your hair is fabulous now, but I think a lot of the time it's getting your medication right. And you did touch on that.
100%.
And that
100%.
trial and
Yeah.
error. For anyone listening, I think that it is trial and error. You'd agree with that.
Yes, I agree with you 100%. And what's funny is, even though we didn't get my medication spot on at the start, it was working, because we were 3 months in, and my hairdresser said to me, how are you finding your hair? And I was like, it's not falling out anymore. And he goes, I'm noticing he goes, we're getting baby hairs. You know, we were at that like beginning of the journey. And I said to my neurologist, I was like, oh, guess what? My hair is growing back.
See, always a good thing. And it makes you feel good when your hair is starting to grow back and it feels good, right? So it kind of goes hand in hand. But I think that you're putting a great face on this, because for people out there that think of Parkinson's in one way, it's great that you're there to show that that is not the way it has to be or the way it is. And I think that's a fantastic message to get across, especially to women out there who might be, and I'm sure you were also terrified when you got the news, because you have a
Yeah.
vision, and
Yeah.
it's that someone
Yeah.
like
You have
yourself.
goals. You have goals. And my lovely consultant said this to me. He goes, I can't imagine, he's such an empathetic man, how hard it is. People with early onset, they have their whole life ahead of them. And you have this interloper that seeks to scupper your mood, your motivation, and your means of making a living. And even for my first like year, my tremor was just really out of whack, and it was worsening, and it was worsening, and we couldn't seem to get it under control. Now we can, unfortunately, with Parkinson's, with the gold standard of medication, it can really be great for a host of other symptoms, not always tremor. And, and that tends to be quite specific to early onset. So there's all these things that you learn on your path. And the importance, Claire, for me, is to share it. No point me having it if I'm going to sit here, be stoic, and keep my mouth shut. And I'm not good at keeping my mouth shut.
No, and you're right. You do need to share it, because even if you can help one person listen to this podcast today that thinks, well, I need help, and there's help out there for me. And Annmarie is such a shining, just light in this whole thing. That is, you're helping somebody, aren't you? And it's so
Yeah.
important to do that. And I think that's fantastic. And would you say, because I really want to find out, and I do really believe that your hair and your health of your hair goes very much hand in hand with your mental health as well. So if you're having even a bad hair day, or you're losing hair, I think I've seen it affect a huge amount of my patients with their confidence. Would you feel that way as well? Do you feel that way about it?
Oh, Claire, a good hair day just sets you up. People can say that it's superficial. I don't. I think it's integral for me. Because appearance isn't I know we work in we live in an image-based society, and we work in, very image-based, fashion and beauty. That aside, I could be sitting in my apartment watching the Housewives in New York.
Which we're addicted to, by the way. Yes, myself. We have to do a whole other podcast on Housewives.
It's a whole other podcast, Claire. It's a whole other podcast. But yeah, there's a new series coming up. I'm so excited. I'm in my element. But I could be sitting at home on my own, and I feel so much better. Whenever I always say this to my hairdresser, I'm like, from the minute I get in, then I get my hair, we put the color on and everything. And by the time my hair is blown dry, I'm like, I feel 10 years younger. I always feel there's a pep in my step, even if I'm just have my hair in a ponytail and it looks good. You feel good. You've got a bit of swagger about you. You've got a bit of, and if it makes we live in a very, life is hard at the moment. There's a lot going on in the world. And I think it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a packet of jelly beans, or the Real Housewives of New York, or a good hair day. But in particular, I think we really noticed it with COVID, with Zoom. We were like, oh my God.
I know.
I have to start wearing makeup on these Zoom calls now. But I just think the mental health is definitely linked to it's mind, body, spirit. It's a trifecta. And I really think that when you're eating well, when you're sleeping well, that has a knock-on effect to how your hair behaves as well. I have to say that during COVID, I wasn't eating as well during the second half, and we had the really serious lockdown. I was in my apartment going, well, might as well open the bag of Doritos.
All did that. We all did that, I think.
But I think now with Parkinson's, if there's a takeaway and if there's a positive thing, you're always told that you need the best medicine is really what you put in your body and to try and meet your medication halfway. And I've made a real effort. I meal plan, I prep most of my food. Granted, there'll be days when I don't, but for the most part, I really enjoy it. And it makes a huge difference. It makes a huge difference to your skin, your hair, hydration, super important.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I say that all the time when someone comes to see me with a hair issue, or we talk about even our skin. Hydration is so important, but so is a good diet. And it can be very hard. I think all of us find it difficult. But I think if you can try to have better days with your diet than eating McDonald's all the time, or just, and it's okay to do that every now and then, but it's balance, isn't it, Annmarie? It's really all about trying to get some balance that works for you, works for your lifestyle. And if you are having any health issues, to kind of look at your diet, I think to go right back to the basics is so important.
Yeah, and it's again, like I think for women in particular, getting protein and building that muscle. In particular, the older you get, your muscle
Losing
tends to
muscle.
deteriorate, and it's incredibly important for your collagen, for the shine in your hair, all your green leafy vegetables. Someone said to me before, she's a dietitian, she said, nothing can go if you put at least a big green leafy salad or a bowl of veg somewhere in your diet during the day, and you get your water, it goes such a long way. Like having dark leafy greens is incredibly important to your health.
Yeah.
And I can't list all the reasons why. I just know it's good, and I'm just
It
being
is
told
good.
this all the time. So I take the headlines.
It is, no, it is good.
Takeaways.
Absolutely, honestly, the more colorful your plate with natural, like with tomatoes, it's very good to have a colorful plate. And the leafy greens are so good for your hair and for your skin. So that really is important. If you take anything away from this, eat your leafy greens, get your spinach and broccoli and eat that. But you're looking very healthy and your hair. So what is a good hair day to you? Is today a good hair day to you? Because you're looking fabulous.
Yeah, today is a good hair day. I think I like it when my my hair is easy to do. Now, I'll be honest because I have to be. I went to the hairdressers today, but
And
but
I really appreciate that. And we all appreciate how much effort that, because no one knows, even a podcast, once it's going to be on screen, everyone, you feel, don't you? Oh, well, you want to make more of an
I
effort.
love it, Claire. I love a good reason just to go and get my hair done. I'm like, oh, I'm not a bit down to Peter Mark. So I love a good hair days when I can get up and I can do it myself. Typically, I like it when it's a bit undone, when it's relaxed, because then I feel relaxed. I find that if I'm too done, although I love like a 90s blowout, I love like a big mane of hair, the Cindy Crawford vibe.
Of course.
I know for me, like on a day-to-day level, I need something that's manageable. So I like my hair to look healthy. I like it to be easy to manage, but at the same time, a bit sexy. So a bit undone, a tiny bit rock and roll, a bit of an edge, bit of
Well,
an edge.
can I say you've nailed that today? You're sexy rock and roll. That fringe is like perfection, Annmarie. And you're looking everything you said, you've ticked every single box. So I have to say that. You're looking fabulous. So it's all good. So very healthy hair here if you're watching. And if you're listening and you're not watching, I'm just going to tell you that she has just fabulous, healthy looking hair today, and she's looking fantastic. So finally, what I wanted to ask you about, and what I want to ask all my guests, but you're my first one, so I want to ask you, do you think that you have a hair personality, or has your hair personality changed? And if you have, what is it right now if you had a hair personality? Is it rock and roll?
Mine, yeah, it's kind of undone, edgy elegance,
Oh,
edgy elegance. That would
I
be.
love
It's just slightly undone. It's not like I don't go in when I go into the hairdressers, I don't ask for a curly blow dry, I ask for the boho one. So I like that feeling that if I go out and it's a tiny bit windy, that it works with the wind.
it.
I'm
Yeah.
not going, oh dear God, trying to put on a hat, get into a cab really quickly to preserve my curls. So, I like that sense of it being like you just had great sex.
And you know what? I think that's a great place that we can leave this, Annmarie, because I could not leave it on a better note than that. So yeah, absolutely. I'm just going to leave it right there because that's perfection. And thank you so much for joining me. And for anyone who wants to find you, where can they find you, Annmarie?
You can go to Instagram. I'm on there quite often. So it's at aoc.me. I know it's like the worst handle. Or you can go to my website, which is annmarieoconnor.com or annmarieoconnor.me.
Amazing. Listen, thank you so, so much for being with me today. And I will see you in the flesh very soon for that sexy undone glass of champagne that we're going to have. Thank you for joining me on Hair with Clare. Have a fabulous day and stay sexy.